This video is going to show you how to find the slope if you're given the graph of a line. So what you're going to notice here is that you have a line given to you, and it's just asking to find the slope, and there aren't any points labeled on the line, so we have to find the points on the line. You want to remember that your line goes on forever in each direction, and what we're basically looking for is any spot where the line crosses a nice grid line. Technically you can use fractional point values, but they're just really hard to read off the graph. So I think I've got one right here. That looks like the point 1, 1. I've got a point here, but I can't tell exactly what that is. My next point right here looks like 0, negative 2. And what you want to remember about slope is that it's a number. It's usually written as a fraction, and the value of the slope tells us something about the steepness of the line. So one thing I know right now just by looking at this is that it's going uphill from left to right. If I imagine myself standing on this side of the mountain and I'm going to walk left to right, I'm going to be going uphill. That means my slope is supposed to end up a positive number. And that's always good to have in the back of your mind so that after you do your calculations, you can check to see that you got the correct sign. Now, you want to remember that slope, which we usually indicate by m, is the rise over the run. And when I have 2 points on my graph, like I have here, what I'm going to imagine is if I were going to start at one point, I'll say I'm starting at this point 0, negative 2, and then we're going to rise up to be in line with the other point. How far would I rise? And if I'm going up, it's a positive number. If I were having to go down, it would be a negative number. So when I look at this, this is negative 2, this is negative 1, this is 0, and this is 1 up here. If I count how many steps that is, that's 1, 2, 3. So my rise is 3. And then once I'm up here, I have to figure out how far I run. When I go over to the right, that's a run of 1. So my slope is going to be 3 over 1, which is just a positive 3. And the fact that that came out positive has to do with the fact that my line is going uphill from left to right. I'm going to show you one other thing about this. It doesn't matter which point you start at. You don't have to start at the point that's the farthest to the left. I'm going to choose a different color here so you can see what I'm doing. So let's say I was actually starting at this point here. Here I am again. And I was trying to walk to this point down here. Well, if I'm starting here and I'm going to go vertically first because that's what the rise does, to get in line with this other point, I actually have to go down. And if you're going down, then we still call it the rise, but we give it a negative value. So this would be a rise of negative 3, which is really a fall. And then also, if I'm going to go to the left instead of to the right, the left on the x-axis is the negative direction. This would be a run of negative 1 because I'm going to the left. So if I did the slope using that rise and that run, I have a different rise and I have a different run. But when you simplify that, you get the same answer. So the slope is still 3. Doesn't matter which order you start. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Again, just by glancing at it, I know this is going downhill from left to right. And if it's going downhill from left to right, my final answer for the slope is supposed to be a negative number. So to figure out what that is, I need to go along this line. I'm kind of looking at different points along the line and trying to find some that are at a nice clean point. I think, they cross on grid lines. Got one there, I've got one here, got one there, and I think I've got one here. And so if I look at what these points are, I That's negative 5. This is 3 up here. This is 1. This is negative 1 on the y-axis. This is 5 over here. And so if I want to figure out what my slope is, I imagine I'm standing at one of these points. Let's just say I'm standing at this middle point, and I want to walk to one of the other points. I'll go to the right first. So let's say I'm standing at this point right here, and I want to get to this point over here. My slope is my rise over my run. So I'm going to first start vertically and try to get in line with this other point. So I'm going to walk down to this negative 1. And if I count how many units I went down, from 1 to 0 and then 0 to negative 1, that's down 2. So in this case, my rise is negative 2. And then if I count how far I have to go to the right, I'm going from an x value of 0 to an x value of 5. That's a run of 5. So using those 2 points, my slope is negative 2/5. Now if I went and used 2 different points, say I'm starting at this point here, and this time I want to travel over here to this point on the left. Well, I'm still going to do the rise over the run. And this time, to get in line with this point, I'm starting at a y value of 1. If I go up to a y value of 3, that's a rise of 2. So my numerator is going to be 2. And then to get to this other point, I have to move to the left. And if I'm moving to the left, that's going to be a negative run. And I'm going from the axis over here to an x value of negative 5, so my run is negative 5. In one case, I got 2 over negative 5. In the first case, I got negative 2 over positive 5. Those both end up being negative 2/5. So the slope is negative 2/5. And the negative, again, has to do with the fact that it's going downhill from left to right. Okay, let's look at a couple of others. This one, these are your axes here. The ones with the numbers on them are your axes. And what I have here is a horizontal line and a vertical line. And I want to think about what the slope is of each of those. So let's start with the horizontal line. I've got some nice clean points here, all on this horizontal line. And for the horizontal line, if I think about the rise over the run, when I'm moving from the first point to the second point and the second point to the third point, no matter which points I'm using, my y value isn't going up or down. So my rise is 0, and my run in between each of these points is 1 unit. So my run is 1. And that means that for a horizontal line, the slope is 0. But if you're looking at a vertical line, let me pick some of these points. If I'm moving between these points, my rise for a vertical line is 1 in each of these cases, but I'm not moving left to right, and so that means the run is 0. And as you know, when you have a fraction with 0 in the denominator, that is undefined. So vertical lines have a slope that's undefined, and horizontal lines have a slope that's 0. And the way I always remember that is I imagine myself on skis. Here's my ski poles. And I'm skiing on this surface. And if I'm skiing on that horizontal line, I'm pretty bored. And I'm not going very fast. I'm probably going 0 miles per hour or something like that. So that slope is 0, but I'm still alive. But if I'm skiing on this mountain, I'm going to go so fast that I'm going to die and I'm going to become undefined. So if you try to ski on a vertical line, you become undefined. If you try to ski on a horizontal line, you just feel like a zero. So that's how I remember the two slopes.